Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andriy Shevchenko, and on behalf of Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform, I want to thank all the journalists who tell the world about our fight for freedom. And we are happy to see Andriy Demchenko, the spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. Mr. Andriy, what's most interesting for the time being? Good afternoon to everybody. Regarding to the fulfilling of the duties by the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, it's been 307 days that Ukraine withstands the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation, and the units of the State Border Guard, together with other Ukrainian defenders, protect our land on all the areas where the warfare is going on. Our units repel the assault teams of the enemy, and during the last couple of days the enemy was undertaking attempts of assaulting actions in Krasnogorivka, but their attacks were repelled and the enemy was withdrawing. The joint defense forces are actively repelling the enemy attack in all the directions. In Bakhmut area, the units of the State Border Guard, jointly with other defense forces, repelled the enemy attacks, inflicting severe damage. The State Border Guard teams use the air reconnaissance for artillery reconnaissance at the enemy positions, which inflicts loss to the enemy. In the last couple of days in Lugansk region, the air reconnaissance of the State Border Guard of Ukraine detected the enemy armored personnel carrier. The coordinates were handed to the artillery units, and the brothers in arms used their damage capacities to destroy the APC of the enemy. In fulfilling of our duties, our units work according to the concept of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, and the units of the State Border Guard maintain the situation on the borders with Russian Federation in the areas where the enemy was expelled from Ukrainian territory. Unfortunately, the situation remains tense there. Russia does not cease its terror. On a daily basis, the areas of Ukraine along the border with Russia suffer shellings. Usually, most of the shellings fall on Sumy region, Chernihiv region, which also suffers shelling by Russian Federation. From the beginning of the month, more than 150 shellings were documented in Chernihiv and Sumy regions. As to the border with Belarus, the situation in that direction is under full control. However, somewhat tense, specifically in the information field. Unfortunately, Belarus does not cease its support of Russia in its war against Ukraine, providing their territory, infrastructure, and airspace. The Belarusian military are reinforcing the border with Ukraine. However, the nature and amount of the units does not change. They are being only replaced on a rotation basis. Still, the joint state of Russia and Belarus keep escalating the situation by demonstrating of the joint preparation of their military forces, the maneuvers with movements of military material, inspection of the readiness of the military units, and the growth of the armed forces of the so-called joint state. However, we don't observe the accumulation of a necessary number of forces which could be ready to initiate offensive against Ukraine. However, no matter what's happening on the other side of the border, our main task is to create the most efficient and strong defense in order not to allow the offensive of either Russian Federation or the armed forces of the Republic of Belarus. In this context, we are now aggressors, and our task is to ensure the security no matter what. And again, not to allow further invasion. The units of the State Border Guard Service and other defense forces which reinforce the border with Belarus are ready for the development of situation in any variant. And we understand that on the other side of the border, they may create some provocations to further accuse Ukraine in it. State Border Guard of Ukraine already reinforced their positions along the border with Belarus. Their works with the fortifications are still in progress. The teams of the State Border Guard exercise the cooperation and teamwork measures, and the mining actions is in progress along the border. The system of surveillance and monitoring is in place using the unmanned aerial vehicles to observe the situation behind the border. I have to know that we did not document movement of either personnel or material of either Belarus or Russia, which in the same way they were doing it along the border with Ukraine. The reinforcement and fortification measures are being taken all along the border with Belarus, because Ukraine clearly understands that Russia tries to pull Belarus into the war or to use their direction for repeated invasion into our country. Regarding the borders with the EU countries and Moldova, the passenger flow was quite dynamic last days. Within the last week it was fluctuating, which is clearly related with the Christmas holidays. In the beginning of the week, during Monday, Tuesday, it was 85-90,000 persons in both directions. Those are the stable indicators. So on Wednesday and Thursday, it grew up to 1,000 persons per day, and on Friday and Saturday, it reached 120,000 persons, and on Sunday fell back to 85,000 people. Yesterday, it was amounting to 80,000 persons. During the intensification of the passenger flow, we did not see the number of people prevailing for either entrance or exit. It was like 50-50. Well, so because during one day it may be 1,000 people more crossing the border in one direction, but on the other day it may change on the opposite. The difference was during the last days for exit per 10,000 persons. During the peak days, the lines on the border were growing, so for better processing of the passengers and transport, the number of inspection teams of the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine was augmented to expedite the processing of the passenger flow. And we intensify the cooperation with our partners for exchange of information to ensure the expedited passing of the citizens through the border. Currently, we don't observe long lines at the border. However, after lunch, we may start observing the growing number of those who wish to cross the border, and we can forecast the growth of passenger flow before the new year, and it's falling back down during New Year, and after that to the stable figures. We can also forecast that the passenger flow will intensify in December, because I'm reminding you that during the autumn month we documented the decrease of the passenger flow 9%, like the 10% in September and 9% in October. Starting from 25th February, more than 28 million people were registered in the border, and the most number was falling on the direction of Poland, and comparing to the last year, it grew almost twice. Besides, we also document that the number of the violators is not falling, including outside the checkpoints. Specifically, this tendency is growing in the borders with Romania and Moldova. In the green part of the border, 8,400 violators were detained, and more than 3,800 persons were detained during attempts of illegally crossing the border, including with counterfeit documents, and the most number of such cases was documented in the borders with Hungary and Poland. I want to add that to reduce the number of those who try to cross the border in illegal manner, the teams of the State Border Guard, jointly with other defense units, undertake all necessary measures, including information campaigns, and we want to warn everybody who is attempting to cross the border in illegal manner not to put themselves in hazard, because the weather conditions are difficult, specifically in the Carpathia region. In the mountainous area, the flow of rivers and the temperatures are freezing, and we documented a number of cases when the representatives of the State Border Guard were saving lives of those who were trying to cross the border in an illegal manner. Any questions? Alla Shershin, Ukrinform. Have you been able to find 3 Ukrainians who were recently lost in Zakarpattia near the border with Romania? Unfortunately, the search is still in progress, and we don't know anything about those persons. The fact that they were lost in mountainous area, we found it out from other persons who were coming together with them, and they were identified by the border guard of Romania, and using the efforts of the State Border Guard, we still maintain the work in progress. Can you please comment how many Russians crossed the border with Russia since the imposition of the visa regime with Russia? From the 1st July, the visa regime was implemented for Russian Federation citizens, and as to the communication of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, 10 citizens of Russian Federation were extended visas, and as of the week before, as per my information, 10 citizens of Russian Federation who received visas crossed the border entering Ukraine. Those were mainly women or children, and they were issued visas either for reuniting their families or for humanitarian reasons. But that's old information. Are there any new figures? Those are the figures that I have right now. I will have a question about dynamics of border crossing. We can assume that the increase in the number of crossing the borders is related to the fact that the families want to meet during holidays. Do we understand it right, that the proportions are the same, that the families either choose Ukraine or the other countries where they meet, like 50-50? And do we understand that Poland is the unconditional favorite in this regard? And do you have any model for the holidays ahead? We have to understand that the number of checkpoints in the Belarus and in Russia, they are closed in due to the resolution of the government, and all the passenger flow was switched to the western borders, and including Moldova, save for the Transnistria segment. But again, as for Poland, people choose the most optimal logistic ways, not only in Poland, but also using it as a transit country. As to the percentage that you say 50-50, it's not like crossing the border is always related to the desire or aspiration to meet their families, but also it's their opportunity to live for other countries, for to cover their some basic household needs, to visit the shops or something like that. It's just that during periods like this, it happens on an annual basis. The passenger flow grows. But talking about time before the 24th of February, we could observe other dynamics, that Ukrainians are coming back from abroad to see their families, including the citizens of Ukraine who were working abroad. But now we know that the men of the draft age from 18 to 60, their exit from Ukraine is restricted. So all this time of the full-scale invasion, the majority of the Ukrainian men had not opportunity of leaving Ukraine. The crossing of border, and this for this category of people is regulated by the resolution of the government number 56, which regulates the regime for border crossing for the men aged 18 to 60. We'll wrap up with that. Visiting us was Andriy Demchenko, spokesperson for the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. Follow our announcements. Stand with Ukraine.